Alas, ta terandane tane quadgipa tane chutsundane tane titsut ta momboji de mando ta inayang nga so temjir gum chomba zamga tane ta chumjir dibaz tane tangbo nge kacha dibaz da sha tane ndana gifshi lana thawaga to lojong ton tsugetna ta tega tare ta longs tare piayen.
It is auspicious to be here in the Kagyu Center, and in this short period of time, there's not much of time to go into detail, but some formal introduction as auspicious interdependent, and eventually there will be a little transmission on the 8th aspect of mind training from the Geshe Langritamba.
Tadirondane chu ta chuchitser gonan ra chumjin jogde de tene zo ngone to ta ji nangchu ga nyangdon ta nyamlen shiagar korte tesere ka sandana to chuchok to lama namgo ta tinja ga kacha dipaz to labna songdo tena to tangin ngama samna ande ta gamboa ga to teni lamcho renchin chwa ta ndi nang ga tsingare mar lawsam ta ina ya jima te ya chi titsok chi disire samand te ina ta nga rangi semna kang chan da teni kacha chare tare chinamba la.
Previously, he was requested to talk about or teach on the essence of the practice of Buddhism, and he had in his mind to explain a little bit about the jewel ornament of liberation, which is the main teaching of the Kagyu by Gambopa. And for that also, it's a little bit of a short of time. And then he decided that he will speak about mind training as it comes from his mind. And he will be talking about that today.
Tene ngazong terang dana tene mang chewa tene boba yansare tene America ga mayang tare mambo yosare tene ta ngayin na thang tangbo thoma chuchong de gonare che namba ga tene netso jimmo ko me te jipko chargi me jilon yabo me inayang tene partana changma da tene ji nangchula tapa yabo yongke dana tene ji bajala ta pansim ta yabo yosare tene ji che namba ga jindang ga tene chawa dang shopa dan da so par ta yongdi tene ji ngone ga ji sachan dane inayang ji nangchu ga ta ji nyamlen da mapchre 다 좋은도 되는 것도 더 관계 바고 라마 콩나 바고 더 같은 거 되는 긴던 거 출라 냠는 여보치요 지레 삼징아랑라 대 이치요
Rinpoche doesn't have much insight into the Dharma Center and activities here, and it looks like today the majority of the crowd here are Tibetans, and there are some non-Tibetans here too. So looks like by looking from it and by observing and by seeing the Kagyu Lamas here and the center and the members, he has this feeling, even though he does not know much about it in detail, but he has this feeling that due to the teachings and guidance of the Lamas here and practices that are done and taught here, has benefited the people, and he gets this strong impression that people have a good intention and good motivation and trying and learning how to apply his teachings into the practice.
tene ngaso dare chuchu innayo tene ji nyangmadang sarja laso ba ga chuchu mombo yore innayo ta chu nyamlen gu guni na tela ta chabar jang yoge yon mare tena tene sachan tene ngarang lam thongsir de jamtha phansin na tene chagdang menke tene ke yang the hkir yang bo sim ya chimbur go ne tene lama namba yanna khong namba phansin de ji yang thyin thombo thunjur pe yabo yang ke dana tene ji ngasu dar loma namba yanna yang dare perna garji ke chuzo yanna da nyama ge chuzo yanna da chama phansin de tene lobjong chigidana chuchin yange dan dela dornan chiginde one ge dare pe yabore.
Yesterday, when he was in Geshe Center, which is a Gelugpa, and today he is here in Kagyu. It is not the difference of a Kagyu or and Gelug, but it is the importance of practicing the Dharma that he gets this impression. By looking at and by observing and by sensing that it is the essence of bringing the Dharma teachings, no matter what tradition it may be, and practicing and teaching in harmony, and he sees all the teachers working together in a great harmony with the right intention to benefit, whether you are Kagyu, Gelu, Nyingma, or whatever, but it is the essence of the Dharma that is important, and which he really sees this thing, and he's very appreciative of that.
Tani ngachu chomtha susogo lama tani sidang siyin na yang chabar yo mare. Re dong ngachu tani chuba ta chu nyamsi lengkhen yindi ngibar do tani lama ten go yo re. Karti lama mafti ni rangkhar ka tani ji chu ga pedim de chola rangkhar ka pesta zoni na ta chu nangdon de dis go re da yin na yang cha changba da na. teni pusum sobazido go tabgoyo mare. Karesena perna ngatsu zambo lang lobjong chera. Lobjong chede yang lobja chongwa dang, lobja rongwa dang, lobja chimbo irimba jenda yaran ro yare. Re dang lobja susoga nang na gergenga teni lobma chola re jenda na lobcha che gore. Karti gergenga lobcha ma che na tene shichip ko nga chog lobma chog lobdip dela perta zone na tene korang chu to ta lobcha chamar zongyo na to lobcha lobjung ga ce cha chamar lepta ba gasa kana yang shar shog na yo mare no shog na yo mare.
The difference in the tradition and the teachers is not important, but the teaching from a Lama, a spiritual teacher, is very important to those who wish to really practice and advance in the path of the Dharma. One may get the impression that studying from books may be sufficient, but it is not completely sufficient. You may learn something from the books and the texts, but without the instruction and guidance from a spiritual teacher who are qualified, real advancing into the path will not happen. Similar to the education, it's not different. You can read the text and may understand a little bit from it, but the complete and thorough understanding and knowing about what it is in it can be only when you are taught and instructed by a qualified teacher. So this is applicable in every aspect of the Dharma practice, because the importance of a teacher to guide you step by step, and system by system, no matter what tradition or lineage you may be, but the need of a qualified teacher is very important, and it is not only in the Eastern tradition, it is also in the Western education system. You need teachers, so this is very important to understand.
Matsu jiktemba lobchong cheya na tendra gilgan tengo yore. Ta tele jang namba sanje baga to chulu te khasa derang gande jiktemba ta lobcha chone lobchong chija nandun te dang derna ta ngatsu namba sanje baga chu nandun te pe zapo dang jachimbo song yore. Ta te indi inchi minchi me tambo ne ngatsu ta giu shenyen teni lama tan de cho chi nyam nyu yon da tene tusum gunsum chim yongkenga ndanchaga lama yabu zida tene tangbo tari tengi de ngatsu tari chuba sidang sayina tene chik te marika khabar dana yarkabka khabar yaw mara chunde nyamsil landi chude yana chik tar mungbaga tapa mayimbaga go tene chunde nyamsil lan shir go re chunde nyamsil lan shir go di tangbo tari tuba de karchenbo re.
Any knowledge, whether be it secular, modern, Western knowledge, or profound philosophical and the knowledge that are in the inner development of the Dharma. Without a teacher, without a proper instructor, one will not thoroughly understand it. And particularly in the case of like a profound inner training and understanding through the Dharma, one really has to go through a systematic and a gradual application of studying about the Dharma, its philosophy, its meaning, then reflecting and contemplating, and then through practicing and meditating. In this way, one will really have the benefit. And to learn and to get a proper guidance, you also need a teacher or a lama or a great scholars who have also, all the trainings through having studied and reflected and then having practice and experiences. And with the combination of these need and inspiration and then qualified teachers, one can really have the benefit. It is not just approaching it with faith and belief or mostly like through blind faith, but it is through understanding and reflecting them one can really then profoundly benefit the Dharma practices.
Da nga tsu poji nangtan nga chuling de ndor sara de na yungzha sam tuba dang tu sam gum ta tenra sam ga nang da ga yore ta tendi tangbo de tene ta tuba de hajang garchewa ten lama gandang ga yenchi minchi me chuchu mambo shi ge de nga zong boba ga yin na ya jindang ga tene lama nam ga chuchu songdi de chuchu de yabo shi ga go jin de pe manja garchen bo re ndo.
One has to understand these three aspects of the approach to Dharma very importantly. The first one is having sufficient studying or hearing the teachings from teachers who have transmissions and the knowledge about what to teach. And that is called like really spending time and putting effort into learning the Dharma correctly.
다 라마 게이션인 때네 담비 추데 마르 투차르데 아니양의 런거 선라 상로당네 때네 삼숑 그 시럽 다 삼바디 가르침보레 네 가상데란데 아메리카가 사참 몽보니 때네 티 롭자 침보 길금 몽보르건도 티 롭자 길금 데초이나 당보 코랑소나 나추 투바요 그만도 투맘녀레 코랑소 때네 다마 곰바요 그만도 옛날에 티 바르가 삼바디 코랑소 요건데 pecha mambo lotane ji shimjig shya don ta samlo mambo tantane yaramara mambo zogndo te ina kurang tsu te ta ngarang ga ta tang ina tane tambo thuba mand thama gomba mand par sam ga ti samba ti ka ta tene nga chung po jin nang tang ga ji chu mambo ji la ji pe na sang ga ko nde so ina garete se ndo wa ji tak chu taknang ga chun do so ina ta parchiri te njige yo sa mare se yo re 야 지금 대치운도 소이나때 코랑조 라마조 파르치 쌈정아인사 레인서거래 단 자동 먼저 세는데 단 된자이나 문에 지금 뺀 살본을 렌도 어디 코랑데라요 베나 다 람고 럼바지요라 디 람고 럼바든 루마시네 존테 데네 추디 코랑게 길라 판밤 요바마즈 메바마즈 데네 노파 야침보즈 지요래
So being instructed from qualified teachers who have sufficient transmission are very important. Now, through Ken Rinpoche's experience of having visited many universities and educational centers here in the country, and having encountered and met with many learned scholars or professors, especially in discussion with the Buddhist philosophy and practices, he realized that many of them does not have sufficient instructions and the teachings that they have received from qualified teachers. Neither they have any experience or realization through meditation or practice. But many of them apparently seems to have some knowledge through having read books or did some researches and having some contemplation or reflection on that. And through that, you can see that there is, of course, a lot of information and ideas about it, but true understanding are not there. Rather, there seems to have more misunderstanding on the practices and the Dharma, particularly when it comes down to like Vajrayana practice or Tantras, such as on the treasure teachings in the Tantric tradition. You have a treasure teachings and many other aspects of the teachings, like pure perceptions that you have to develop. So on these issues, they rather seems to have more misconception rather than a true understanding and aspiration, because it's a lack of having not sufficiently heard and received teachings from authentic source and nor having any proper practice on by meditating on them.
당아주 네 보지그 나왔던 러지나 તને તાંબો 봐 베나 지름보치가 송요래 tambo 예칠 토바 마운드 사바르도 종lik 탐치 담가 셔르 다 타만 냠승 건도 냠습랑 건정 담바지 비체도 홍 다 tambo 투밥자 tene pardo tene 냠슬랑 tene 타마이나 다 종lik 샤데 도쇼 종lik 인난자 tene 흥학의 쇼고 종lik 인난자 강당 강이나 참마다 다 종lik 능돈소 탐쳤 그 남극 공오잔도 샤네 다 남극 참마다 남극 거네 tene 지금 개발 시작선오이나 참마다 란직 뇨모와다나 대진의 란직 또방 안 봐서 탐쳤 저르시지 그다 진이었다 또 용지도 송어래.
According to the Rinpoche, most important thing is first to have a sufficient study and reflection on it, and then applying them into practice. Then eventually it comes to really receiving the pith instructions, whether be it in the Sutra tradition or a Tantra tradition. It is the pith instruction that you get from your own teacher that helps you to transform your unknowing state of mind, such as ignorance, into understanding and realization. And also, it is the big instruction that helps to transform one's negative emotions or afflictions into like a virtue, like.
토바도 삼바르 했더니 곰바 딱 곰바도 Per 가르침버래 가르팅아서 때 종르그 익차근 원이 있나 다 추근 난돈데 여보스 시레다네요 티스타버 진더 랑가 냠스마랑 곰마점나 아더니 다 추근 난돈데 랑기 직기 베나 뇨몬반도 쳤다 제당 대진도는 다 처럽 토마메 바가 박창 안바 몸보시 요래 대초 탐쳤던 마라 땅 고놈 바가 잠했던 조르고니나 땅 이버드 연로무 바르다 곰접고래 가르테 곰머접게지나 다 추근 아주 길라다 판바 토고네나 빽가 가보요래.
Having knowledge of the Dharma is very important, but it is eventually the practice, through the practice of meditation, that really brings the ultimate benefit. In any systematic teachings and trainings, you really have to go through the process, through the practice of meditation, how to overcome by applying the antidote and remedy that are there as a root of suffering, such as desire, anger, hate, and all the habitual tendencies that are there. Like, so to overcome and to be thoroughly purified of all this negativity, such as, or obstacles such as the afflictions that are in the mind in the form of anger and desire, and the habitual tendencies are through only meditation. And the meditation is the ultimate key to uproot all these defilements.
Tani ngazo masay na ya tani matse thong thong ta maschik matse te lo parchir ta ya yarmat kinin ya yarman dana peche rambo se yora ta te ma to ngazo chi parchewa to ta mo lor ngap chi tikchi ta danchi yachen ne to ta jikten paror don ror gore ta jikten paror don ror go na tani ngazo mo mombo jikdon tani sargi ge chuda yam cha lama ge shen de yam cha re da rang tambi chun de nyamsil ma toi tani ta chu ga sane jo tani gansak ge jete thamar da tere jo ta ten rawa ga shi song ne na ha le ba ga ta sam phambo re 가르세나 맞소 다 남지 그네 금난 직된데네 바로도 누르 거래 판 루이나 뭐직되디 땅 알아서 지 치우대야 투토다래 mambo즈 토도래 레다나 랑기 짓데라 야포즈듬 저메네나 다 할레바가다래 베껴보래
Human life is very fragile and subject to impermanence of death. At the most nowadays, people may live for 100 years, but not everybody does that. People die early, younger, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s. So they have to live this world and this life and go beyond. But now, what really benefits when you have to go beyond this life is the practice of Dharma. Once you die or leave this world, you leave behind everybody. You have to leave behind your teacher teaching. But if you have practice, and that is what you carry. If you have not practiced and have really met with many teachers and Dharma, but it is a waste, there's nothing you can carry beyond. So the stream of your mind, your consciousness, that which transfers, carries the impact of the practice that you have, not the impression that you have collected. So to change the stream of your consciousness into benefit is the Dharma.
다 당상 자모랑거 드네 다 사차 소소 레강 소소 나이나 드네 다 곰잡기때 페 가르침 보츠고레 캬버드양 다 상동 곰바 다 상동 곰바가 드네 곰적은 난돈데 파르체하다 가츠 또 보진 나왔던 거 나나요 바데 지스타와제레 다른 양 당선 그 사차 소소나 곰잡인디 난돈데 가츠 보진 나왔던 거다 상동 그 차시즈레 가츠 네 추바초 있나요 텔레잡 텔레 야체와 텔레 흑사로 mombo 지그도 곰땅 요레 이나요 지 mombo 지그 텔라 그 곰게 마도 티 점성거 테니 랑기 jelapena 도착케네 난자 제단케네 난자 따테다리 제단 랑컬마 쩨응드기 점선 치레잖아 마츠 추데 곰마타바레 가르테 추데 인 랑보 와르도 곰탐나 테니 응응거 라마 고마 라마 담바 콩남바거 남트르전다나 테니 토머 지다 남토그랑 카와다 도처랑 카와 제단랑 카와 mambo 지게나야 다 인롱고 와르도 테니 곰 점노 토거니 남지거네 컴나 테니 테지 뇽모와 테소야나 지 참마다나 다 잠했던 로주 니바 쳐버jan즈 요거레 다 데인데 당선 당아주 머르거 잠바다는 니모소이나 테니 상튼 고야가 내급 거 남톡데 소마랑 고는 용 샘지 데모 기보용케다 배 mambo즈다 답상통 고는 또 거요레 레다 나츠 텔레장 상바가 다 보게 남도나 망어 mambo즈 라마 고마나 바 송요라 근데 좀 운이 자네가 더 나츠다리 곰자고인데 가르테 곰마제 랑커 카야 뭐야와가 다 된다 데 마체 동저스 존나 할레바가 더 방보레
These days, the practice of meditation, such as developing concentration also called mindfulness, are very popular here in the West, and many institutions are teaching and promoting. And it is just simply a way of being, temporarily free from distractions that are predominantly through afflictions. And these all instructions on meditation, such as concentration, are part of the main teachings that are in the Tibetan Buddhist lineage and tradition. But within the Tibetan Buddhist lineage that has been for centuries practiced and carried away and taught by great masters, carry within it much more profound benefit than just simple relaxation through concentration. There are great depth, so deep and so vast and profound benefits that are there through these practices, which one can learn and study and apply them. Now, the main thing about the practice of meditation is not just for relaxation, but it is to cut the root of afflictions such as intense desire and anger and hatred that creates all these kind of afflictions. So through the instructions and teachings that you get from great teachers and masters of our past, centuries, who have preserved and taught, and they are still applicable. And then, one will realize that the practice of meditation is much more than relaxation. It can really bring a clear cutting of all these afflictions, such as disturbing thoughts and desires and all the ignorances. So paying attention to these instructions and practicing can be very important. If one dies without having applied these practices, and what a loss it is. Because generally, if we are not aware of these profound methods, we are simply carried away by many forms of distractions. And through distractions, we really spend our time, and it's from a dharmic point of view, it's a waste of life.
Tatini zodo karesirna toga number 2 toga ta tsemar taqwagu te karchembore karesena de ngachu masdan seyna ya tsemar taqwa de yung le labore ya ngama de America ga de chobush jambush yorwa de kashi khabar ka surtong ke koran de kashi khabar ka ta lenki karte rawa ta koran jin jana tani koran ji chuba ji ngacho boba ga ji chuba na ten da yansa mara yana chula tankes yansa re ta koran ka sena kolam lo simchu soksam ra tani lo jirden ne na chulam cha res tani lo simchu soksam la ko chu nyamsam la ta jima dare 다 시란디 콜라 짝짝가 만들었어. 다 니마레레 진다 다 대랑데 체가 타마레 대랑데 다 샤와 탐치근 중마레 삼네 그 인던 거는 체마토가 없는 거 띠스톱고 다 지콘 시란디 대라가 짝가 만들었어. 지마 다 간선 거나 탭내는데 그런 거다 남터는 된다세요래. 다 때나 지코 총총인디 그 가초 다 보바가 지 추바촌은 ratni 지 상기바가 출라된 찬는 말에 있나요 다지 머르가 잠바가 있나 자가 여커 잠바가 없는데 소가 타바 진보가 추운데 냠슬로나 오늘 장내가 미기다 깨래 미기다 깨나 드니 지 맞춘 체카 낙축을 등을이나 다 매지 다 대당 잡아장 거다 맞수 첸더양 배 로통통저와 다 롭집창가리다 yapchak다 대야르마르 야야르마르 드니 지 처럼 몸보네 몸보고 빠르더나 다 레짐제젠데 게도 흘러ame 바래 다다 추여보즈도 접소나 드니 지다 처럼 심ar 남세요나 주 대장 기빠 대기 부슴 소바단데 가티 첸데 就他没给我个吃完么子的来呢，他我呢长那个人给生了点大个不吃俺把子都讲呢，等你就他是蒙他没吧。等你他点着是的，等你俺送个东西名字单了，等你大就对了，没吃就人看还讲清楚的，等你那俺做累金针的，也话是中间的，累金针自己的改的怎呢？那俺做个软米也难着，马上把个咱不能个深圳适当适应呢，得了个送呢，他可能啦，我呢长那个可能个菜地当啦，他吃个七八有啥，别那俺做。Jarkub ka sacham zina ta mu tso shi sona te cham ka chapa yo re re da ko ka te shi ma sona te la cham ka chapa yo mara re dan le jemre ze ji ten re mara shina ra ma shina ra gang ta riang ta nga shi me per na rang li ga tang de to ni ber jang ga na me yong na ze kam le jemre ze yo re te na tsu ji jin dang ga chemer ta ya bo gom ji da na te ne ji le jemre ya ho ze ta ji gom ji le jemre te la ta lang do ya bo chen ni na ta tang su na chu ga ta re zo 다 냥돈 저거 난자가 되네 저다 곰냥는 거 하나 조 최지진이나 할레바 거침보래
Remembering the impermanence of death is very important. Constantly being aware of it. That's part of the essence of Dharma teachings. As you may have known, this one who founded this Apple products and TV or computer, or Steve Jobs. He had been somehow familiar with the Buddhist philosophy and approach from early age, from the age of 17, like that. And somehow this principle and the philosophy of it and some aspect of the practice has been strongly influencing him. It is said that having reflected on these things and understood the meaning of impermanence, he somehow managed to take every day as one day after another, in the moment. And apparently, he claimed that he was not really fearful of the approaching death. Somehow, he managed to experience some sort of a peace, and that is really good. He may not be particularly practicing Buddhism in the Tibetan tradition or having received instruction. Somehow the Mahayana Buddhist approach and philosophy had a great impact on him. So those of us or those of people who are now studying Buddhism and having received teachings and reflected and meditated, it is really important to remember oneself again and again the impermanence of life. We all are subjected to death, no matter how healthy it may be, but maximum life is, as one said, 100 years old, but we die before that too. So now when one is approaching the death or going through the practice, now it's not only the reflection on the impermanence and death, but the cause and effect, the karma. The cause and effect of the karma is something that one should truly understand and apply it very sincerely and observe it very thoroughly. In one way, it may look like the karma and cause are not different from the law, but in truth, it is very different. The law, if you have, in this life, you may have to bear the consequences of having broken the law, and receive the punishment or reward accordingly. But the karma, the cause and effect, is much more subtle. It goes from life after life, life after life, and you cannot somehow avoid the consequences of what caused the action and the result. So reflecting and understanding and observing thoroughly the importance of the cause and effect of the karma is very essential as well.
Also, the number two, 또 다 마음만나 라랑 소송원이 다 추바야 보슨 로지데 배 가르침 본도도 체레제나 단산지 다 시험바 몸보여래 근데 다 심지그 zon케양 몸보여래 아가바통케양 몸보여래 조的납초고 다 따와데 때 가바통 저 조렌도 마소 샤쇼고 따와데 조데 야라 즈바 때 가접지라 가바다 즈바 요니는 그 샤쇼고 때 참말아지 다바다는 딱나 조이 근데 납쇼고 참말아 때 가바통 저 조조도 때레다 얘네야 오늘 전에 샤데요나 때 샤쇼다 납쇼고 간 얘나 추가 내링 좋겠는데 배 잠볼로나 고모래 나초라는 거니 너 상로다나 다 예츠보여래 teni korang tsu gaba gare tongna yang teni jing gare gaba de ji ta don to lan zhuwa yang nyongxi yore da yin na yang ta dari zen zhe zhe ji ngoni zhani shadi qirong na ta nga tsu dari chu ge nang don de ji gaba tong go yang ma da gaba tong na gaba den zhuwa yang yo ma re ta di yin ba de tsu ngarang tsu boba ge merjia yin na zha ge zhaba yin na zha ge cangma ge dangbo chu de yagbo zi ge xi go lo teni chuya bozi 시디데 teni chuya nangdonde 당럽고 teni 찬릭 dana 다 릭박사로한테 촐라 다 여바즈도 저시고 데 여보즈도 저시네 teni 다 몽보시 마시만도 다 라랑 소송원이야나 다 냠린 여보즈 취나 멋진데 통통려 다 멋체 통통데 teni 냠린 여보시나 다 멋체가 냠보데 데레 근도 치레제나 다 제랑 존다나 요니 보바 몽보지 그때니 지금 청아종 콜로종 배야본도 오늘 전에 가성한데 게시가 추석고 나나였나 근데 보바서 또 몽보고 또다 청아종는 또 청아대 그런 좀 젊은도와 사착다다 또 사찬 또 제거 잠바가 롱바레다 옛날에 맞소가 장나 요비 답배다는 냥제다는 대초 돌고요 삼마레 되니지 단 너쇼고만 몽보 지게야나 가성대랑 되니지 추운데 냠래야 보치다나 때 그런 좀 셈나 니시야 보치는데 다때 조 gum 거래 가르테 gum 마점나 랑커거 당상다나 tene techi lotra chimbo girgan sogo nim chameda pechape mombo taganda yena koran so gumyo mara koran so gummedi tene chi nyamling gor ge chayig da teso lakhya ba mombo ta tene koran so dilla ma chi de tela chi lokhta da karnde mombo lab kanda da ta teso yena chi namba kakare koran so jimjigar namba ga tene nga so nyamlela 다 스타트시에나 다 그런 소양 시탑고요 말아 알아서 줄라야 반바 요거 말해 그런 딸이야 땅아주 근데 추석을 너무 소이나 야 남바 카카레 근데 참아가 냐는 양보 취근도 참아가 추 난돈데 양보 다리 시근도 고 때 가르침 보낸다 되나 다 남바조 가르세데 지 추데라 로중 시기다는 냐는 시기 다조 또 돈다 니나 여보 너근데 그래 디타다 그거 다 존지 좀로 더니 제도죠
on the profound nature of the Dharma practice and the benefit, which is the training the mind, there are approaches through many different ways. Scholars and critical thinkers from the West view it with kind of a critical approach, but those who are practicing may approach it with aspiration. But whether you are approaching from a critical approach or through the pure aspiration, but speaking to those of us who are now wishing to practice the Dharma for its true benefit, it is important, as has been spoken now, having sufficient understanding and knowledge through studying and receiving teaching and reflecting, and eventually through meditation. And through the practice of meditation, only one can thoroughly accumulate the benefit of it. As again, which encountered many critical thinkers and scholars who like to know more about the Dharma and the tradition and the practices. And as mentioned before, those scholars, having studied a little bit through books and reflected on it in some way, has more critical thinking or question rather than a faith and belief in it. And to such an extent, some of them have misconception and the misinterpretation of these profound, inner development practices that are in the Dharma. So, through reflecting and meditating and practicing, what one should try to really get is the certainty. When you reflect thoroughly and meditate, then you really become certain and convinced on the truth and the important nature of the teaching. Once you are thoroughly convinced, not just by influence, by convinced, and then one will really have the real approach. So now the final advice is Rinpoche himself is very impressed by meeting all the Tibetans here and non-Tibetans, culturally non-Tibetan, meeting in the Dharma centers, which is very different from the academic institution or other different institution. But he is getting really impressed by the people observing people and seeing people with the mala in their hand or prayer wheels in their hand, and really becoming comfortable with that and reciting mantras. These are, from the cultural point of view, they are very important and signifies familiarity and being accustomed to the practice. But the most important thing is reflecting, studying, meditating, and becoming thoroughly certain and convinced of the truth in the Dharma. So pay attention to this.
다 로정 측근 연마가 그 롱 전에 실동 공연대 로정 측근 연마 또 마인박 다 가지고 쇼고 또 로정 그런데 가래다 다 야나가 있게라 저네요 다 당상이나 네 람초 전천청아 신나 람초 전천청아데 tene yang tangsang ta janak ikir kana tene yer mambondo ta yana ya jima ngaranga mara chi lopchu shed guna tene yang chi rangi chi ger jona ta tab deboda tene rangi yang ta chi ndi chu ndela bakchak ka chi re jana yana tene chu pe mandrawa ga ta chu zabmo chu shanlapchan tene chu rangi dilla yang ta rimjor guji tenra ga ta chu rekando tene na ta tangsang 네 실제란 로저라더니 체 남바가 치웠더니 다 람초 전전 총하더니 말을 저저라 더니 로요 대난 오늘 저 땅어서 라룬 간에 있나다 좀 타리면잖아 카장서 많이 바고 동거던 거 더니 남바 솔라다리 지 로종식이 오고 모바 된다요래 더니 지마다링이 공고샤나 타워 가서다리 더니 보바가 지좀 타 소소응원이나 당상가지 딱 로종체기대야나 배나 nga kwaji bayana kwaji bi chukuna nyamslenge de mare dene je tarong de lama jamta jamba ga de pecha de solo lojongshi pecha de solo tare ngone ga dene stakrshi ta deyna tare ji nga so tung utone dene lojong chegiwonde tare karchemore dene nga so dana dane bobayna ra dene jamba ga de 머럭 소이나 gendang ga de lojong chegena 때 할레바가 그 가르침버리죠.
The approach of the Dharma practices in different traditions such as Kagyu or Nyingma, there are many different ways. In the Kagyu tradition, there are like a Langzhou Rinchen Trengma, one of the teachings from the Gamboba, the Supreme Path, and then all these mind trainings, the 8-point mind trainings, which are general. So Rinpoche himself has been, referring these teachings and using them to teach or understand and reflect And now the point here is those who are studying Dharma and understanding, learning, wishing to understand, it is not the sectarian approach of this school and this tradition. One has to be open-minded to learn and study from all different faith and path or traditions. And they have different unique methods which are all very beneficial. So, and all of them are very profound and has a lot of benefit and blessings in them, and it can change your habitual tendencies and also like that. And the main thing is always to really purify the mind stream into pure aspect rather than be, like submerged in the afflicted state of mind. That is what Rinpoche wanted to be inspired and motivated to learn from all the different traditions and teachers, not only being stuck to one's own particular ways.
Sonam dai tamche zeba dumna nibe jana panche jan kika nanchi ralong choba shibam solen roa